Well, hello there. I do believe we are live. I got to make sure I'm not muted. I am not muted. Holy moly, I did it right for the first time. Good morning. As of the time of this recording, it is Thursday, a.m., 9:30 Central Standard Time. That would be 8:30 Mountain, 7:30 Pacific, and of course 10:30 Eastern. You can figure out the math wherever else you are. And I am excited today to be talking with you about signs that your company culture is dysfunctional. Now, I have a couple underlying notes here. By the way, my name is Jaime J with Bottleneck Virtual Assistants. You can go learn more at bottleneck.online. If you're in the medical profession and you're worried about HIPAA compliance, you can go to bottleneckmedical.com. And of course, coming soon, bottleneckrealestate.com. Coming in about around August 15th, so the latter half of this year here, of 2019. So now that we got that out of the way, as I said, we are going to be talking about signs your company culture may be dysfunctional. And I do want to say there's a couple underlining things. So I'll be talking about this. It's company culture, in my opinion. And if you want to learn more about company culture and what that is and how unbelievable people are doing that, you can go to culture.bottleneck.online. It's Culture Eats Strategy is my podcast. And all we talk about is culture. So I am a huge fan of culture, good culture, bad culture, in-between culture. What may work in one company may not work in the other, but they may have unbelievable cultures there. And the whole thing about culture, in my opinion, is behavior and communication, right? So if you don't have good behavior, or if the behavior that you have is not something that can be contagious or respected within a certain environment, that could be dysfunctional. Obviously, if there's a lack of communication, that could be dysfunctional. And there's several things that you can look for that could, in essence, make your company culture dysfunctional. But I do want to underline this. I do believe Bottleneck has an incredible company culture. However, we have times of dysfunction. We have times of miscommunication. Overall, I think we're fantastic, but we're always continually trying to improve that process. And a lot of it has to do with feedback, and a lot of it has to do with communication and understanding and our behavior. Do we buy in to our bigger vision, our ripple effect, our leading with kindness mentality? Do we make decisions for the company first, the staff second, and then the client third? Because if the company is not healthy, how are we going to pay our staff or take care of them? If our staff is not happy, how can I expect them to go out and treat our clients with any amount of respect, dignity, happiness, anything like that, kindness? So there is a plan of attack moving forward, but there are times of dysfunction. I think this goes without saying in any company. You can have an unbelievable, crystal clear, awesome culture, but there can be some trying times. So I want you all to understand that. But at the same time, when those trying times start occurring more regularly, if people, meaning staff, the leader, the business leader, if you dread going into work, that's a huge indicator that their culture is dysfunctional. And people don't leave jobs. They don't quit jobs. They quit managers. 2 or 3 things that could have come from that. Number one, the manager is not a good manager. He doesn't offer clarity, or he's not very communicative. Maybe he talks down to people, or she talks down to people. The other thing is maybe that job role is not something that aligns with your expertise, right? And a lot of times people will take jobs for the sake of taking jobs. And we have to understand there is this thing about slow to hire, quick to fire. 2 schools of thoughts on that. you have, when you hire fast, but hire smart. Have a good solid job roles and responsibility. Have a good set of questions that are going to align somebody with a similar belief system. Google it, like find out how to ask people good questions that will align their values with the core values within an organization. And if an organization has core values that align with the culture, you're going to see a lot less dysfunction. So here's some different signs of your culture is I'm going to give you 7 signs today. And this was done by an article written by Alexandra Levitt. And she's a business and workplace author, a speaker and consultant at alexandralevitt.com. And this was actually written on the American Express blog. Number 1 that she wrote down here is your internal competition is worse than your external competition. Ooh. So basically what she's saying is, although some competition is healthy, teams that constantly fight with one another over executive support and resources, they really impede progress. And a culture in which employees criticize and belittle those in other groups, or target one department as the source of all the angst, the finger pointing thing, you have to work with finance on that. I'm so sorry, is also a disastrous for morale. So you have to make sure that when you go into these, you're including everybody, but also you're on a team. It's a team effort. The chain is only as strong as the weakest link, just as a team is only as strong as its weakest team member. And if there's something a bit out of my scope, of course, I will want to approach the persons whose job roles and responsibility include that. But just like this past week, we had our social media managers on a trip. They are going to another country. So we had to pick up the slack. What was really neat that I saw was that before she left, she had somebody take over all of her roles and responsibilities so that nothing is missed. We don't skip a beat there. And what's really neat during our conversations this morning during our marketing meeting, you could see how all of it was picked up. Now, sure, are there going to be some things that are dropped along the way? Yes, but it's very manageable. We communicated the fact that she was leaving a while back. We have processes in place for when things do, for when someone does leave, because sure, you're going to go on vacation, things like that. But as long as you have those processes in place, it's really going to be helpful. So take over, and it's okay if you do things on occasion that are outside your scope of work, or at least try to help follow up and complete that task to where you're not just walking by the trash on the ground. Pick it up, throw it in the trash can. It's not your responsibility, but what's wrong with doing something like that? Number 2 is management refuses to change with the times. Oof. Organizations that have been in business a long time are often guilty of doing things a certain way because, well, that's the way they've always been done. And even though Darwin said that we must adapt or die, some leaders won't take off their blinders long enough to read, listen, or even recognize obvious and sensible solutions. This has a lot to do with managers being open to constructive criticism and feedback. It also empowers your staff to talk with you and to let them know that what they think matters. There's value to that. But we live in a constant state of beta, as Miha Matlievska says. We live in a constant state of beta, meaning don't worry. You create a system and a process, it's going to change in 3, 6, 12 months from now. Just expect that to happen. Number 3 is you've lost 20% of your workforce to voluntary turnover and you haven't replaced anyone. Having this many people departing for greener pastures in a job market that still isn't that strong says something's negative. But if the business isn't replenishing any of its labor, it's a big warning signal. It means that things are so chaotic that managers can't proceed with the hiring program and or they don't care that each employee is doing a work of 3. Yeah, this is a big red flag. Why? Because, and I see this a lot in Bottleneck with our clients, and they'll come to us and they want to hire a rock star, but they say, I don't have time. You better make time. you better have an open door policy. That your staff should be the most important people in your organization. If you have a client call or you need to meet with a staff member, and granted, it depends on what that issue is, but if you have a client call or a staff member that has a massive problem, you better meet with a staff member 100% of the time. Granted, there's stories around here, you know, but that's how important your staff is. You better have an open door policy. And if you don't, you will see people departing for greener pastures, and chaos will ensue. And one person will be doing the work of 3, 4, and 5 people, and they're going to end up leaving. It's just a recipe for disaster and dysfunction. Number 4, the stories from the trenches are legendary. And what does that mean? Well, no happy hour shall pass without rehashing the CEO's epic blowup at last month's user conference, or the time one department didn't go home or sleep for 2 days in order to meet a last minute deadline. If these are the type of anecdotes circulating around your organization, well, it's time to create some positive buzz, right? So I want to hear stories of success. We have, it's so nice and refreshing to have meetings where one of our staff members is thanking another staff or another department, and because they wouldn't have been able to finish what they were doing without the other people helping them out. It's just amazing to see that kind of happen. So this is number 4, the stories of the trenches, that negative stuff. You want to get rid of that. Number 5 is direction from the top is the flavor of the week. Strategy is always changing based on the latest management or culture fad. And occasionally, because one person thinks it's a good idea, management decides to change things up a bit and play fast and loose with the organizational structure. Given that reorganizations cause mass confusion and diminished productivity, they should be reserved for only the most essential circumstances. So, living in this, now this can be a little confusing because living in a constant state of beta means continual change. But there's a difference, and this can start, the root cause of this can start from what I recently learned was the difference between a meeting and a briefing. In a meeting, there's more plan, there's more recap and planning. In a briefing, there's delegation, things are being done, there's direction giving, and there's something is going to happen as a result of this briefing. We're briefing them on a directional change. It's in my opinion that we need to lead up to briefings through meetings. We need to plan for these briefings. And then when it's launch time, there's a briefing. There's a briefing launch during launch time, because if you automatically just switch what you're doing and pivot from one place to another, your team's going to be like, what the heck's going on here? I was supposed to be doing this. Now I'm doing this. Well, now what? And there's going to offer up tons of confusion. So direction from the top is the flavor of the week, meaning stay the status quo, plan for the changes. When the changes happen, then establish a briefing, not a meeting. Then hold a briefing, not a meeting. Number 6 is bureaucracy reigns supreme. Efficient processes and procedures are necessary in a well-run organization. But if your approval cycles are too long, involve too many or too few people, or are always changing, you may need to rethink them. Similarly, if your groups are always revisiting the same conversations and reporting the same information in a different format, your culture is bound to feel counterproductive and stifling. Ooh. We've experienced some challenges here with approval cycles remaining too long. In the beginning, it worked well because we were pretty hands-on. But as we grow and those automation processes are there, automation is great. I'll tell you that. Automation is fantastic, but there needs to be a personal touch. And once we started getting too busy, we recognized that we needed to shift. And so we were planning to, and we're going through it right now. We're switching CRM from the old CRM to a new CRM so that we can have improved processes and overcome our inefficiencies. Now, there's still going to be inefficiencies. Yes, of course, but we're going to reduce the amount of inefficiencies, therefore making our clients happier. So we don't want to revisit the same conversations and report on all the same information in a different format because that's not moving forward. Right? So we have to get rid of the bureaucracy by making sure that we systemize every single aspect of our business. It's basically, Scott Beebe shared this with me, and it's one of my favorite mantras: do something as if it's the last time you're ever going to do it. So when a new task is either delegated to you or that you're doing, document that process every single step of the way. What I like to do is I record a video, and then we write it out in outline form. Click here, do this with screenshots. So there's a step-by-step. That way that process is secure. Move on to the next one. And number 7, innovation isn't really valued. I've seen this in so many companies, she says. Organizations like to think that they appreciate creative and entrepreneurial thinking, but their actions suggest that they'd be much happier if employees stayed in their little boxes and did their jobs without complaint. When the values you tout publicly don't match up with what you reward internally, your culture isn't going to be a very pleasant place to work. And I know that for a fact. And Alexandra Levitt nailed it here. This is one of the biggest aspects, in my opinion, of making sure that your culture is not dysfunctional. It's my company. I started it. I believe I had a lot of great ideas to get this thing launched and off the ground, but I'm only one person. There's absolutely no way I can think of everything or come up with all these creative ideas. And I love the fact that if I make a decision and it doesn't work out, my staff will call me on it. They'll let me know. Now, granted, they do it in a very kind way, and sometimes they're a little afraid to say something, but I really appreciate that. And number 1, it's a great learning experience for me. Number 2, I love the fact that the staff comes up with ideas sometimes, and we're able to use that. Now, our CEO, Anthony Wolliver, says I have a Socratic leading method, meaning I ask questions in order to get feedback from others instead of give directive. And I understand there's a lot of different leaders out there, but Anthony has a more stern approach to his delivery from a leadership point of view. And I appreciate that. And we really, really fit together that way. But I also love the fact that our staff is not afraid to make a suggestion or not afraid to call me out on something that I did that may or may not be working, right? So innovation isn't really valued. This is a great key in dysfunctional cultures. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk with you guys about today, as far as a dysfunctional, some signs, 7 signs that your company culture may be dysfunctional. And I hope you got a lot out of this. There's tons of articles out there. You can Google all of that. You can also go to bottleneck.online/blog. We have tons of articles on this kind of thing. And again, go to culture.bottleneck.online to listen to the podcast, or you can just Google Culture Eats Strategy with Jaime J. And we have tons of great interviews on there. So if you're looking for ways to improve the culture and make sure your culture isn't dysfunctional, or to repair that, highly encourage you, go check it out. There's some amazing guests on there that give us all kinds of great insight into what they've done in their company culture to really make it thrive. So again, my name is Jaime J. This has been the Thursday morning Facebook Live with Bottleneck. And to learn more, you go to bottleneck.online. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I do think that's about it. So I'll go ahead and wrap here. Have a fantastic day. And remember, let us help you stop the bottleneck in your business. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.